Good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango, and tonight's topic is the ARRL January VHF contest and the Ohio VHF Simplex contest, and prepping for both of these two activities which occur on January 18th. As I mentioned earlier, the link to the slideshow is at tiny.cc/OVHFSC, stands for Ohio VHF Simplex contest. You can either jot that down, or you can shoot the QR code with your phone. I'll have this at the end also. This will give you access to all the links throughout the presentation. Anytime you see this italicized font, that means there's a link you can click on, and when you do that, it'll take you out to other resources. So you'll need those to be able to go through all the resources. Tonight's topic are going to include contesting, specifically VHF contesting, including the January VHF contest, the Ohio VHF Simplex contest, a general introduction to contesting, some VHF Simplex operating tips, getting on the air with VHF Simplex, and other Ohio-centered contests, which I'll cover at the end. So the number one goal today for this event is to get you on the air, whether it's January 18th for the Ohio Simplex contest or the ARRL VHF contest, or any other time you might get on the air and operate direct Simplex not via repeaters. Nothing wrong with repeaters, but I want to talk about tonight contacting people directly. So getting on the air with your tech license or with any license in the VHF UHF contest is a good opportunity. There are actually 3 ARRL VHF UHF contests throughout the year. There's one in January, one in June, and one in September. They're very similar, although the conditions are often quite different for each of the contests, so they do have a different flavor to them. The nice thing about all these contests is you have 100% capability with any license, whether it's technician or higher. You have complete privileges to operate on all these bands. So if you're a technician, you might not have full privileges to operate on HF, but on this contest you will. This year there's an additional opportunity overlaid with the ARRL VHF contest, and that's the Ohio VHF Simplex contest. It runs concurrently, but only for the first 4 hours. So the Ohio Simplex contest will be the first 4 hours of the ARRL contest. You're welcome to work both of them at the same time and continue on and work the ARRL contest through its end. It actually starts on January 18th at 2 p.m. local time, and it continues until 6 p.m. on Sunday. So actually it's the 18th and 19th for the VHF contest. But Anthony, all this sounds like a lot like contesting, and I'm not a contester, you might be saying. Well, you have 3 options. You can embrace the competition of the contest and jump in and have fun. Or you can ignore the competition aspect completely, pretend it's not a contest, and just enjoy the fact that there's increased opportunities to make contacts on these bands. Quite often, there's not a lot of people operating Simplex on the VHF and UHF bands, so just think of this as a chance to work many people. You don't have to keep a log if you don't want to. You don't have to send your log in if you don't want to, but we'd love to have you do that if you can. Or just try it out and decide later what you think about contesting. I have a whole presentation on Introduction to VHF UHF contesting with a slideshow and a video recording that I'll have for later that you can go through. Again, whenever you see this font or this symbol, that means there's a link you can click on for more information. This is a 1-hour recording just on VHF and UHF contesting in general that I did last year. There's also a class available from the ARRL on contesting. If you're an ARRL member, you have access to the ARRL Learning Network, and I actually authored the class. It's 5 modules you work through on Introduction to Contesting. It's about 3 or 4 years old now, but it still is very relevant. There's also some books and other resources available online, videos, etc. And I have some links here that you can go through later. I just want to highlight the one here for right now, and that's from Dave Kassler, KE0OG. Must I submit a contest log if I make contacts in a contest? And the answer is no, you don't have to. The other person will not get dinged if you don't send a log in. So don't worry, if there's a contest going on, you want to work 1 or 2 contacts, go ahead and work them. Don't worry about sending a log in. Now, if you want to send a log in, you might end up getting a certificate and some other things, but You don't have to send the login. It won't hurt the other people in the contest. So I just want to make that clear up front. VHF UHF contesting is very similar to HF contesting. The keys to this are quick exchanges, typically a signal report and then some sort of exchange. And we'll talk about the exchange for this particular contest. There's points that are given per contact, and there's something called multipliers. Multipliers can be things like states or counties, etc. But in most VHF UHF contests, the multipliers are typically grid squares. And if you're not familiar with grid squares, I'll be explaining those in more detail on a later slide. But there's a link here where you can find your grid square if you do not know where it's at. There's a variety of modes available. Single sideband, CW, digital modes are all available during this contest. Some of the differences between VHF UHF contesting and HF contesting involve something called QSYing. The Q symbol QSY as a question means, should I change to a different frequency? Or as a statement, please change to a different frequency. What we're talking about in VHF and UHF contesting is quite often someone might make a contact on 6 meters, for example, and then at the end of their exchange, they might ask the other person, what other bands do you have? And once they know what other bands they have, they might arrange to work at a different frequency. So if I work someone on 6 meters, and I know they have 2 meters, I might say, let's QSY to 144.120 and work there. Or let's go up to 442.1 and work there. So this whole idea of, depending on which band you have, you can QSY and make contacts. It's perfectly legal to ask people to make contacts on other bands. Typically they start on the lower bands and work their way up. There's a couple reasons for that. One is typically the lower bands will have bigger coverage, so you're more likely to find people there. Second, the antennas, if they're gain antennas and their beams, the bandwidth when they're pointing out is much wider on these lower frequencies and gets much tighter as you go up in frequency, but there's nothing that says you have to do it in this order. Another thing that's common for VHF UHF contesting that's not common in HF contesting is called roving. That's moving from one grid square to another during the contest. And that means that you can be a multiplier again for a station that you've already worked if you move to a new grid square. Also, the openings are often much shorter and much more variable. You get a lot more fading and stations cutting in and out than you do on HF. It's also a much more friendly contest, as usually you're talking to people not as far away, not around the world, but maybe a couple counties over, maybe across the state. Now, VHF, UHF contests cover these bands typically. VHF starts at 6 meters, 50 megahertz. 2 meters at 144 megahertz and up. Some people might have 222 megahertz, the 1.25 meter band, but a lot of people don't. You don't have to have all these. You can have any one of these or more than one and work. UHF typically is described as starting at 70 centimeters. That's 420 to 450 megahertz. 920 megahertz or 33 centimeters, and 23 centimeters is 1.2 gigahertz. There's a bunch of microwave bands above this, but for our purposes, we're just going to limit ourselves to these 6 bands. And in most cases, people are going to be operating 1, 2, or 3, typically 6 meters, 2 meters, and or 440. Now, I mentioned grids earlier. There's something called the Maidenhead grid square system, and it gives a grid square to every part of the globe. It starts in the far southwest corner and it works its way northeast, with AA being the first grid square, and then as it goes up north, they keep changing letters, and each row, which you can tell by the lines of latitude, has the same suffix to it. So we have CM grid, DM grid, EM grid, and FM grid. When we look at longitude, they have the same prefix, so DL, DM, DN, EL, EM, and EN. So EN, EM, and FN are going to be the most likely grids you're going to work during this contest because they cover Ohio and part of western Pennsylvania and part of West Virginia, etc. These are the areas you're most likely going to work, especially on 2 and 440, although 6 meters may open up and go all the way across the country. There's a number of places you can find grid information. When you click on this link, it'll take you out to an article that I wrote for, I'm sorry, clicked on the wrong one. Let me try that again. I'll fix that. The link is also right here. This is an article I wrote for the local newsletter a number of years ago. It talks about the Maidenhead grid square system in general. There's actually multiple characters available. We're going to be mainly concerned with 4 characters or 6 characters. The 4 characters get you basically down to like the county level in size, and the next 2 bring you down to something similar to about a quarter of a township size in Ohio. So you can go through and you can use any of these different ways to find your grid square. There's the QRZ website, there's the SOTA map site, there's the DX cluster site. Any of these let you put in an address and find your grid square. I happen to be in Echo November 91 HE, and that's my grid square. Located in the northeast corner of Stowe, Ohio, just south of Hudson, and just west of the Portage County line in Summit County. I'll let you go through and find your own grid square later, and I'll fix the link here. But let's take a look at Ohio in general. With the 4 character grid squares in Ohio, there are 10 grid squares that are covered in Ohio. One grid square, EN80, and another one, EN89. The entire grid square is in the state of Ohio. The rest of them, only portions of the grid square in Ohio. EN91 extends a little bit over into Pennsylvania and up actually into Canada. Same thing with EN71, covers part of Indiana and Michigan. And you notice 2 of the grid squares are extremely small areas of Ohio. EM78 in the southwest covers just a little portion. The rest of it is outside of the state. And EM98 is the smallest section of grid square in Ohio, just covering this one little area on the Ohio River. And you can get a copy of this. You can blow this up as big as you want. This is a very high definition map, so you can blow it up and zoom in quite a bit on it. Now, before we go on any further, I want to stop and see if there's any questions about grid squares or anything I've talked about so far. So if you have a question, either raise your hand or put it in chat, and I'll be happy to try and answer it before we move on to the next section. Okay, seeing nothing, I'll continue. If you think of questions later, I'll cover everything later at the end also. There's a number of modes you can operate during this contest. Yes, go ahead.
I thought I put it in the chat, but I was wrong.
Okay.
I saw EM98. Should that be EM89?
Yeah, 89, yes.
Okay.
Yes, here it is right here.
I was trying to look for.
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
EM98 is in Ohio, yes. And I got to fix this.
One spot it says 98, the other spot it says 89. And
yeah, they're both Ohio grids. Both of these are Ohio grids.
Oh, maybe I'm just not seeing 89 on the left.
EM89 is Chillicothe, and EM98 is just this little section here off, mainly in West Virginia, actually. Down at the bottom down here.
Oh, okay. I'm just not seeing 89 on the left then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the map, but it's not on your list.
Yeah, I got to add it to the list here. You know what? I think there's 11. I think I forgot this one when I did it.
Okay.
Does anyone here live in this little area? This is a very interesting thing for Ohio contest, of course. Now there's a bunch of other EM at 98 out there, but all the grids are the same size for the most part. Yes, I'll fix that little error.
As long as I'm not confused anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, there's actually 12 areas, I think.
Yes, I think there is. I think my counting was off, so I'll fix that. So let's talk a little bit about modes. You can choose to operate a number of different modes in this contest, and some of that's going to depend on what equipment you have and what skills you have. So voice mode, single sideband is one of the possibilities, but your radio might not have single sideband capability. So FM is another voice mode, but only analog FM. What I mean by that is no DMR, D-Star, Fusion, etc., just analog FM. Now digital, and we're not talking about those digital FM modes here, can include things like FT8, FT4, JS8 call, MT63, and there's a variety of versions of this. Olivia, Thor, these are all digital modes that require a computer interface to operate, but it's not difficult, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And if you have CW capability and you have CW copying capability, you can operate CW. So you have a variety of modes you can operate that are valid for the contest. all contacts must be made station to station simplex. In other words, not through a repeater, not through a satellite, not through an internet link, any type of things like that, hotspot, cross band modes, etc. So it has to be simplex station to station. Now, I keep talking about both contests, and they're not exactly the same. The Ohio VHF simplex contest does have some slight differences, and I'm going to go over those now. But if you're going to operate the Ohio simplex contest in addition to the ARRL contest, make sure you also read through the rules, and I'll show you how to get to those. The first thing is it's only the first 4 hours of the contest, so you can work both of them during the first 4 hours, and then you can submit your log for the Ohio simplex contest with just the first 4 hours, but you can do all the hours for the ARRL VHF contest. There's a slightly extended exchange. In other words, the exchange is a little bit longer for the Ohio simplex contest than it is for the ARRL contest. Instead of using the 4 grid squares, it's going to use 6 characters. So it'll be 2 letters, 2 numbers, and then 2 letters. So when you look up your grid square, you want to find out what your 6-digit grid square is. You can exchange a 6-character grid square in the ARRL contest, no problem. People are just going to ignore the last 2 digits in the most cases, but you need to know your 6-digit grid square for the VHF simplex contest. You also need to know your county, or if you're in an EOC, Emergency Operating Center, or an ARRL operation. Those are the other things that would be included in the exchange. So the exchange might be a little bit longer. The other difference is the Ohio simplex contest allows multiple contacts with the same station on the same band as long as they're using different modes. In the ARRL contest, you can only work each station once per band, no matter what mode you're working them in. Now, if they change grid squares, you can work them again in both contests, but I'm saying if they're in the same grid square and it's the same station on the same band, the ARRL contest only allows you to work them once per one mode per band. There's also some different station categories when you're entering. It doesn't have anything to do with the operation of the contest, it's just the way the results are going to be tallied. The other differences are bonuses. There are no bonuses in the ARRL contest, but there are some bonuses in the simplex contest. If you work an ARRL official or an EO emergency station, you get bonus points. If you're operating portable, you get bonus points. If you're simultaneously sending APRS data, you get bonus points. And you get bonus points for the number of counties you work. None of those count as bonuses in the ARRL contest, but they do count towards the Ohio simplex contest. And the QSO point values are slightly different. There is no special values for QSO points in the ARRL contest, but in the Ohio simplex contest, FM analog gets you 5 points, FM digital gets you 10 points, and each other QSO gets you 2 points. So for the full rules for the Ohio simplex contest, you want to click on this link, which will take you out to all of the rules that are there, and I will fix that link because it's wrong. But here's what it is. You go up to the rules at the top, and it has all the rules in detail here. And if there's questions about this, I'll answer those at the end. But I'm not going to go into it any deeper right now. So what I want to talk about is a little bit about contesting in general. There's some myths that a lot of people hear about contesting. You might have heard this from your friends, or someone might have told you. And there's some myths that it's all about the equipment, that you have to have a super station to be able to work contests. And that's not the case at all. We'll go through and bust some of these myths in a few minutes here. The second one is, myth is that your radio or antenna is not good or new enough for contesting. There's also a myth that you can't use FM in contest, in VHF, UHF contest, and there are opportunities to do that. You need an amplifier to contest. You need a tower and a beam antenna to contest. Let's break some of these myths. Even simple or old radios can still make contacts, and actually I would say someone who knows how to use their radio well with an older radio is going to be much more effective than someone who has a brand new radio that hasn't learned how to use it yet. So don't worry about the age of your radio. It's not the equipment, it's how you use the equipment. The largest number of contacts on VHF, UHF contests are typically now FT8 and FT4. Single sideband and CW are the next most common, but there is some FM activity, and especially in this contest with the overlay of the Ohio Simplex contest, you can be guaranteed that there'll be FM activity throughout the state of Ohio. So it's an additional opportunity, and that's very good if you don't have a radio that can do single sideband or digital modes, and you just have a simple FM radio. That means there is activity for you in this contest. But again, remember, that's only FM Simplex activity. Talking about the amplifiers, if you do have an amplifier, that puts you in a different category completely, because most contests separate out by power of the stations operating. So you don't need an amplifier. Matter of fact, if you do have an amplifier, it makes it a much more competitive category. As far as antennas go, good antennas always help, even more in VHF contests than they do in HF contests, but they're not a panacea. A simple dipole or a vertical can still make lots of contacts. Some other myths are that new operators cannot win contests. There's way too much to learn, and if I don't finish in first place, there's no benefit for me in contesting. Well, with so many contesting categories available, even newbies can finish first in their category or place in the top 10. There are a lot of resources for new contesters to learn more, but don't worry, you can learn it as you go along. So just jump in, get started, and you'll learn as you go along. Don't worry. No one's an expert, and no one wins every time. It took me 40 entries in the CQ Worldwide before I got first place in the world, but I had plenty of fun along the line, and I actually won some first in the US contests. So don't worry about winning, worry about operating. Many contest operators enter contests to pursue awards, improve operating skills, or just to have fun. So what do you need to get started in contesting? You need a radio or radios and an antenna or antennas. You need some basic operating skills. You need a list of available contests, contest dates, rules, etc. And I have links for those in this presentation. And you need a way to log your contacts. Although paper logs are still acceptable for some contests, computer contest logging is the preferred method for most contests. So you can write it down on a paper, but if you want to do computer logging, it's really recommended. For more information on antennas, I have a whole 1-hour presentation on VHF and UHF antennas, and this is the slideshow that goes along with that. You'll see that it goes through a number of different factors on setting up antennas, different types of antennas for everything from handhelds to mobile radios to multi-mode radios, etc., to mobile radios. So that's all available for you to take a look at. I did that along with Marty Wohl N6VI, and you can watch the video of it. Also, you might say, well, I don't even have a beginner station, I just have an HT. Well, if you do have a mobile radio, whether it's in the car or at home, it will greatly improve your ability to operate on VHF and UHF, not just during the contest, but for public service events, for checking into the local net, for other type of activities. It really helps to have something other than an HT. This particular article, a beginner's home station, was in response to a number of people who I've had in my classes over the years saying, you know, I have an HT, but I want to get a better station. What can I do? So this goes through and talks about some scenarios of setting up some stations, and it gives you actually 5 different scenarios with different radios and different antennas and power supplies, and talks about the cost involved, and gives you lots of information on some sample stations that you can use. These are all using mobile radios and a base antenna. Now, I keep talking about radios. We're going to talk about 3 different categories of radios that you can use for this contest. The first one is FM only radios. This might be an HT or it might be a mobile radio. It only supports FM. Analog FM is what we're talking about here. It doesn't have single sideband, doesn't have CW, can't do digital modes, etc. That's one type of radio. The second one is a VHF, UHF only multiband radio that's also multi-mode. In other words, it can operate FM, but it also can operate single sideband. It can also do digital. It can also operate CW. That is a multi-mode VHF radio. There's also some HF radios that have a VHF multi-mode capability with them. So some of you might be familiar with something like the old Yaesu 857 or 897 it had both HF and VHF and UHF. Or you might be familiar with the newer ICOM 705, a 5-watt QRP radio, but it has both HF, VHF, and VHF and UHF is multi-mode, not just FM on those. So here's a little chart that I put together. If you have an FM only radio, that's great. It's the most widely available, inexpensive type of radio you can get for this. There's a wide variety, including both HTs and mobile FM radios. Again, the only mode you'll be able to work is FM. Your number of QSOs will be limited, though, because most of the people that are not working the Ohio Simplex contest will be working modes other than FM, but there will be some FM activity. If you have a multi-mode radio that does VHF and UHF, then you can have single sideband, CW, FM, digital, FT8, FT4. All these modes will be available for you to use, and that means that you have a better chance of working someone in the contest. An example of a multi-mode VHF, UHF only radio is the ICOM IC 9700. It has 2 meters and up. It has 2 meters, 440, and 1.2 gigahertz. So you get a wide variety of bands, and you get multi-mode capability. There's a number of discontinued or used radios available, not just this new radio, and I have a link here to VHF, UHF mobiles. It's from my spreadsheet on buying radios. These are all radios that have multi-mode capability on one or more VHF or UHF bands, everything from the old ICOM I2OTs, which you may have seen. Definitely not the radio I would go out and pick as the first choice right now, but it does have single sideband capability, and I have used a radio like this to make contacts. Some much more recent things like the ICOM 746 has 2 meter single sideband capability on it. The 9100 has single sideband capability on 2 meters, 440, and 1.2 gigahertz if you have the module installed in it. So these are some other radios that are out there. There's some Yaesu, some Kenwoods that are available in the used market if you are thinking about adding a radio. I mentioned earlier something HF plus VHF, UHF. A lot of you might have something like the the Yaesu FT 991 or 991A that has HF, but it also has VHF and UHF, and it has multi-mode capability for those. ICOM 7100, ICOM 705, which is a QRP radio but has all those features. And there's some other radios out there that have been discontinued, like the Yaesu 857, 897, etc. All these will get you a number of possible contacts in any VHF, UHF contest. This is the chart I showed a little earlier. Here's one of the other charts that has the ones that have VHF, UHF, and HF on them. Now, one band, 6 meters, is probably going to be on most HF radios you buy. If you bought a radio that's made within the last 25 years, it probably has 6 meters on it also, an HF radio. And that 6 meters will also have multi-mode capability, single sideband, CW, digital, and FM operation, all from that radio. So you might just operate 6 meters. Maybe you don't have any other VHF, UHF equipment. That's fine. Just get out that HF radio that has 6 meters on, get 6 meters wound up, and that's great for the contest. Now, if you want to operate digital, some of the older radios don't have a digital sound card interface, but it's easy to add one. I have a whole presentation on FT8 and FT4 digital operations. And the nice thing about 6 meters during this contest, not only can you work local stations, but 6 meters may open up and you may actually work stations all across the country. And this is the time to get that activity, is during these VHF, UHF contests. Now, I keep talking about radios, and that means money, but there's ways you can get on the air without spending extra money. So, free or almost free includes any existing equipment you already have. Home brewing an antenna. I have a number of antennas I'll talk about later that you can put together very inexpensively. I'm talking about under $10. Using a 10-meter antenna that you might already have on 6 meters with an antenna tuner. I worked my first 48 states on 6 meters using a 10-meter antenna with an antenna tuner on my old Kenwood 680. So yes, that can be done also. Or borrow equipment from someone, or work with another ham who has VHF, UHF radios. Check with your local radio club, with your friends. Maybe you might even want to work a multi-operation with more than one operator. Maybe do something with your club. So there's ways to get on the air without spending extra cash. Now, the 2-meter FM analog radio, maybe your HT, you can get on there with that. You can get on with 6 meters. So these are ways you can get on with the equipment you already have. Now, if you want to spend a little extra money, you can make things a lot smoother. If you have that HT and you want to upgrade to something, upgrade to an FM mobile. You can get one for under $150, a decent model that'll get you, instead of 5 watts, get you 35 or 50 watts on 2 meters FM. Install a vertical base antenna, such as one of these common or diamond antennas. I'll talk about these in a few minutes. If you can put a small beam up, or even if you can put a portable beam up, can make it much better. Now, if you want to spend a lot of money, you can go out and buy a multi-mode VHF, UHF capable radio and antennas. But there's a lot of antennas that you can do on your own. So DIY antennas can include things such as J-poles. This is a flower pot antenna, and you might be wondering what a flower pot antenna is. I'll show you how to build one of those in a second, but basically it's a piece of coax and a piece of wire and a small coil, and it's hidden inside of this flower pot. A Moxon is a small gain antenna, a ground plane antenna, beams and quads. There's a bunch of possibilities. So here's a J-pole made out of twin lead, 300 ohm twin lead, and just a little bit of soldering and cutting gets you suitable for rolling up in your pocket and then hanging from a nice high height, and it'll be much better than the rubber duck that you're using on your HT now. So you can hook this up to your HT. I have a couple articles here on antennas. If you're going to be using an HT, at least add a tiger tail to it. A tiger tail is a simple ground plane of wire that you make up that fits on the base of your antenna, and that link looks like it's bad. Let me fix that. I'll have to fix that link. But this is what a tiger tail looks. It's 17 to 19 inches of wire. Just ground it on your radio somewhere. It'll improve its signal capability. But something like this J-pole even more. So here's some articles and some videos. I'll let you watch these on your own because time won't allow it tonight. But I have a couple hours of work for you over the next couple days to find out about these different types of antennas. A ground plane antenna can be very simple. You can put one together with one SO239 connector and a little bit of copper wire, and you can easily make a simple ground plane antenna. Quarter wave antenna from KB9 VBR. Michael has an article here on YouTube on how to do that. 7 dB gain antenna. This uses some very simple home materials. This is an article from QST, and you can put something like that together. This is one of the antennas that I built when I was a novice. It's called the Long John 2-meter beam. It's a piece of 2x2 lumber, a bunch of aluminum clothesline wire that you straighten out and push through, and a piece of copper pipe. And it's not very difficult to make. I had this suspended from the ceiling in our second story of our apartment. And the first station I worked on 2-meter Simplex was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, from inside the apartment. I had this mounted on a fishing swivel from the ceiling with 2 drinking straws on either end, so it would stay in a horizontal position, and it would also stop it from rotating around the room. We had our first child, our son. This was in his bedroom above his crib, so he was the only kid without a mobile with clowns or something on it. He had a 2-meter beam across the ceiling, and this is something that was 8 foot long, but very simple and easy to make and very inexpensive. And this article is from one of the most famous hams out there, Bill Orr, who did a ton of construction articles and wrote a ton of books. So that's available. Here's a bunch of antennas for 6 meters. Here's that flower pot I talked about earlier. Here's how to build one. It's basically a long piece of wire that comes down, and then there's a coil of coax. You can do it on a piece of PVC. Here's another example of it here. Oops, let's fix that. I just closed that by mistake. Here we go. went back to the wrong one again. Let's try that one more time. Okay, so this one has a still shot here. Basically, it's got it in millimeters here, but you can convert that to inches. So you just basically take a piece of wire and attach it, or you can strip off the coax shield and use the coax, the center conductor of the coax. It's got 13 winds of this on a PVC mount, and you can hide it behind a tree. You can do anything you want with it. You can do it for different bands, but that's what a flower pot antenna is, if you'd ever heard of that. Here's a DIY Moxon antenna. There's also a commercial one available from the ARRL. It's a 10 meter and 6 meter Moxon. It's about $200 for that. But this one is something you can put together very inexpensively. Now, if we're talking about commercial antennas, you can go to your favorite radio store or call them up or go online and order this and have it here in plenty of time for the contest on the 18th. If you don't have something like this, it'll improve all your VHF, UHF contacts. It'll let you check in the net. These are base fiberglass antennas. They're different lengths, starting at about 3 foot and going up to about 15 foot in length. The longer they are, the more gain you get. But they are an omnidirectional vertical polarized antenna, great for FM communications, checking into your local repeater, checking into your nets, etc. They start at about $69 and go up to $250. Different brands, Comet, Diamond, Hustler, there's a number of them, and they just work. They're very simple to put up. You can take a simple pole and mount it on a tripod on your roof. A friend of mine who just got his license needed to put something up. I had just taken down some old chain link fence, so I had a 20-foot piece of chain link fence rod. Simply put a hole in the ground, put that up in there, put this on top of it, and all of a sudden, many, many more contacts. Or something like a handheld beam. This is one designed for satellite operation, but it works great for 2 meters and 440 portable operation. This is an ARRL antenna. There's both ARRL and elk, anywhere from $100 to $200. You might want to get a longer beam. They start going up in price, about 150 to 350. Gets a little complicated, anywhere from 6 to 20 elements on 2 meters. This is a log periodic. It covers everything from 6 meters through 1.2 gigahertz. They're not real cheap. They averages about $350 for one of these, and they are a little awkward, but they would work also. Again, I have a whole slideshow that I mentioned earlier on the VHF, UHF antennas, and I also have something called the antenna guide that I put together a number of years ago for Field Day, mainly focused on HF, but this goes through pros and cons of different types of antennas, and then if you scroll down, you'll find a whole section on mobile antennas and VHF and UHF antennas, satellite antennas, general antenna resources, etc. How can you make your antenna better? Well, the trick is to get it up in the air as high as possible. Especially important on VHF, UHF, and any line of sight contacts is you want it polarized the same. Now, the convention is for FM, we use vertical polarization. For single sideband and digital, we use horizontal polarization. So what happens if you put something like this up that's vertically polarized and you want to make contacts on single sideband? It'll still work, but it won't be as good. But it'll still work. I've talked all the way to Virginia on single sideband on 440 with my little antenna on the roof. A lot of it depends on what the other station's like, what they're running, how much power, how much gain they have. Don't say no, just try it and it'll work. But if you can get the same type of polarization, you'll be much better off. So again, if you are going to do mainly single sideband digital, think about a horizontally polarized antenna. If you're going to do FM, a vertically polarized antenna is great. But again, get them as high in the air and clear as possible. Match the polarity with other stations if you can. This is a slideshow and a video on setting up a VHF, UHF contest, the basics of what you need, power supplies, coax, etc., etc. And then this is a 4-hour course on Beginner's Guide to VHF and UHF. Marty and I, N6VI, put this together. We presented it over 4 different weeks. It's 1 hour. Each one is a 1 hour plus of time, and there's also a slideshow. This link will actually take you out to the Beginner's Guide to VHF and UHF. It gives you all 4 videos and the slideshow, but if you scroll down on this, you'll also see a whole section on Beginner's Guide to HF. So there's also a 4-hour series on Beginner's Guide to HF that you can go to. So both VHF and UHF are in this link. I also have brief presentations on making contacts, on how to make a single sideband contact. It says HF, but it's the same thing for VHF single sideband contacts. There's a slideshow and a video. Digital, there's a slide showing you on making digital contacts on HF and VHF, basically FT8 and FT4. And there's also a slideshow on making CW contacts. If you're interested in more information on FT8 and FT4, I have a whole presentation on digital sound card modes. If you're interested in CW, I have a whole presentation on called Fun with Morse Code. Talks about getting skilled at operating Morse code and operating a number of different things. So if you're interested in those, take a look at these presentations. Now, if you do have a radio that's capable of doing FT8 and FT4, if it has digital capability, it all basically has to have a single sideband capability. You can't do it on FM, but you can do it on any radio that handles single sideband. You can do that very simple with WSJTX. And if you're already operating WSJTX on other bands, or even on VHF and UHF, for the contest, you only need to make a couple small changes. So you go into your settings on WSJTX, and you click on Set File, Setup, Advanced tab right here. Once you click on the Advanced tab, check this box for Special Operating Activities, then choose North American VHF, then click on the little box that says CQ with individual contest name and type ARRL in there. Click OK, and you're all set to go. So you can make contacts on 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. These are the frequencies for FT8 and FT4. Now, WSJTX already has the frequencies in for 6 meters. You'll have to type the frequencies in manually for 2 meters and 70 centimeters, and then FT4 frequencies. If you want to use JS8 call, which will let you operate, give the more details that you need for the Ohio Simplex contest, there's a link here on JS8 call, which is similar to WSJTX, but a little bit different than FT8 and FT4. And if you want to operate the other digital modes I talked about earlier, they use FL Digi, MT63, Olivia, Thor. These are both free programs, just as WSJTX is free. These will let you operate digital mode, sound card modes. As far as logging goes, I mentioned you could log on paper, but I would suggest you think about setting up a computer log, not just for this contest, but for all your logging as you get more and more active in amateur radio. And I have a whole slideshow here on logging software, and there's a video that you can watch. It talks about not just contest logging software, but logging in general. There's two main contest logging softwares that are by far the most popular. N1MM Logger Plus is a free open source software. There's a link here to go get the software. There's also a slideshow and a video on using it. It does not provide complete support for the Ohio VHF Simplex contest, but it does provide complete support for the ARRL VHF UHF contest. So if you're using this logging software, you're either going to have to make some notes of additional details, such as the counties that the stations are sending, and jot that down, or you can use the Control N function to make a note for each contact with that additional information for the Ohio Simplex contest. The setup, basically, you go in, create a new log in the database, you choose the contest that says ARRL VHF Jan, which is the information for that. You need to put your grid square in the contact information, and then you're ready to go. There's another software that's very popular, N3FJP. It's a commercial software. It's not very expensive. It's $8.99 for the VHF only contest. But if you are interested in this, I would suggest you try out the demo, and if you like it, pay the $59.99. Then you get all the contests, not just the VHF contest, and you get the general logging software also. But again, it does not provide direct support for the Ohio VHF Simplex contest, but it does for the ARRL VHF contest. Now, why participate in these contests? They're great for completing things like worked all states. They're great for getting VUCC, which is VHF VHF UHF Century Club, similar to the DXEC for working different countries, but this is for working grid squares, and the number of grid squares you work depends on the particular band you're on, but you can get awards for that. Many categories are small enough that even a newer contester has a chance to win a category. I was in New Mexico a couple years ago. I had my portable 817 with me with a little rubber duck antenna. It was the VHF UHF June contest. I got on from the hotel I was at. I was using the downspouts and the railings of the balconies as reflectors. I worked about 20 contacts, sent my log in, and I got first place New Mexico QRP in the VHF UHF contest. So you might win a category even when you don't realize it. If you want to operate mobile, VHF UHF rover is a great idea to do, and then you don't have to worry about antennas at home. You can go out and set up portable antennas or antennas on your vehicle. Here's a video. I'm not going to play it for you right now, but you can go through this video from Scott, and he talks about a newbie operating rover and how he set up to operate rover from his vehicle for VHF UHF contest. A neat thing about the VHF UHF contest is they're rather friendly. The atmosphere is friendly, laid-back competition. It's a chance to connect with old friends around the state. It makes for great club competitions, both between club members and between local clubs. It includes all licensees, tech and above. It's more laid-back atmosphere than many of the high-pressure major HF contests, and it still gives you a chance to work multiple different modes. Getting ready for the contest, the first thing you need to do is plan your operation, decide what you want to do. Do you want to operate fixed from home? Do you want to go to a portable location with a specific grid square and set up a portable station? Or be a mobile rover station that moves around during the contest? Or maybe your club wants to set up a multi-operator, multi-band operation. Have all your radios installed before the contest. Again, the preferred polarization is FM is vertical, single sideband, CW, and data are horizontal polarized. If you're going to use software, try it out ahead of time so you know how it works. Find stations. You can use suggested published frequencies. You can also use DX cluster, and you can also spot. There's no limitations on using spotting. There's no such thing as assisted in VHF, UHF. Spotting is fully allowed and encouraged. Some tips for newer contesters: make sure you read and understand the contest rules ahead of time. Make sure you know your exchange. Contest QSOs should be kept streamlined. Send only what is required. Avoid excessive information. Repeat only requested information. Don't give everything 2 or 3 times unless someone asks for it again. Not all contesters will be on the suggested frequencies. Tune above and below. And if you've never operated single sideband before, it's not channelized like FM is, so you need to adjust and tune the frequency, tune the station in exactly. If you are operating FM, they're sort of channelized, so know what the Simplex channels are that are used for FM, and they're all in that beginner's guide to FM, to VHF, UHF I talked about earlier. Know the CQing station's call sign before responding. Nothing worse than answering a station, making the contact, and they go, "What? Could you repeat your call? I didn't get your call," when they've been sending it 10 times every minute for the last 3 hours. So make sure you know their call before you call them back. If CQing, give your call sign frequently enough that people don't have to ask you for it. If you're a rover, when you move to a new grid, let people know you're in a new grid so they can work you again. Keep track of stations you've already worked, even if you're using paper logs, so you only call them once. Don't call the same station again, because they can't work you again unless they move to a new grid, or in the case of the Ohio Simplex contest, they're on a new mode. After the contest, submit your log to the sponsors. Here's the link to submit to the ARRL. Here's the form to submit for the Ohio Simplex contest. Submit to both. Now, before we take questions, I have a couple other quick things. That's the end of the VHF UHF contest, but there's a couple other Ohio activities that you might be interested in. There's something called state QSO parties. There's 48 of them during the year. The Ohio party is August 26th, so if you're interested in doing that, you have plenty of time to get ready for that. There's something called Parks on the Air, or POTA. If you haven't heard about it, you're probably under a rock, because it's one of the most popular growing activities in amateur radio. And you can operate from any of the state parks in Ohio, and people will be glad to work you. There's also something called OSPADA, which actually predates and probably was one of the ways that Parks on the Air became popular. It's called Ohio State Parks on the Air. It's held the Saturday after Labor Day. So it'll be September 6th, 2025. Again, you operate from Ohio Park, similar to field day operations, usually about 1 to 4 hours. It's an HF contest, not a VHF contest, but it's an Ohio-centric contest. So I'll go ahead and take questions, but again, the tiny.cc OVHF-SC will get you access to this whole slideshow. I'll leave this up on the screen so you can shoot the QR code. I also have the link to the Ohio Simplex contest and the ARRL VHF contest. And if you need a PDF of this, you can click on the link here. Before I leave that up on the screen though, we're going to take questions and answers. This is my contact information. And the last slide is all of my presentations. I have a few presentations available. If your local club would like a presentation, I'd be happy to do one. If you're close by, I might be able to do it in person. If you're far away, I'd be happy to do it via Zoom or Meet or any type of electronic format. So, and you can also go to these. There's slideshows for all of them. Many of them have videos that I've recorded at other presentations. So take a look at that big list. But again, we'll go back here and we'll take questions, and you can shoot the QR code while we're doing that. So either raise your hand or put it in chat. Either way is fine, and I'll try and answer any questions you might have. Oh, by the way, Tom is recording this, so he's going to post it afterwards. So if you need to go back and listen to something, or if you want to share this with your friends, Tom, are you going to be posting it where, on the website or on YouTube, or you're muted? You're still muted, Tom.
There I go. It'll be posted on the Ohio section website.
Okay. So questions?
Well, that's a really dumb question.
No, there are no dumb questions.
You mentioned know your exchange information before you
Yes.
start. What are you referring to there?
So it'll be your grid square for this particular contest.
Okay, thank you.
And for the VHF Simplex contest, it's going to also be your county. So if you go to the VHF Simplex contest, you'll see in the rules here, they have information on the exchange. Rule number 4 tells you exactly what the exchange is. So for example, Jason here on FM, he's saying N8EI, Summit County, EN91DB. So I would be Summit County also. I happen to be in Summit County also, and I would be EN91HE. So again, know your county, which you probably already know, and your 6-digit grid square for the VHF Ohio Simplex contest. For the ARRL one, you just need to know the first 4 characters, so it'd be EN91 in that case, and they don't do the county as the exchange.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. That was a great question. It was a dumb question. So other questions, please.
Tony, this is Bob.
Yes.
And I'm a real newbie. How do you get a grid square?
How do you get a grid square? Well, in the presentation, when you go back to the presentation, what you're going to go to today, you're going to go to the section that says finding your grid square.
Sorry, I tuned in a little late.
Oh, no problem. There's a section in here that says finding your grid square. Let's just go there real quick and we'll actually go through how to do that. There's only 70 slides in this, so it took me a few seconds to get back up there, but and I clicked on the wrong one. So when you go out to this site, you can either go to the Levine site right here. This is what it looks like. And you put in your address. and you submit it, and then it'll show you the map. See, it shows me the grid here is EN91HE. It'll show the map, and I'll confirm that's where I'm at, and that's where I'm at right there. Or you can just put in the zip code, or you can put in your call sign. In most cases, it'll find your call sign. Let's just try someone here. We'll put Tom in here. And he's in, that's not, wait, helps if I put
That's
type your
not
call
me.
right. I put a
Whiskey
D-
Bravo
I put a D in there instead of a B. I thought I put a, there we go. That's not it. I still have a D. Why is a D still there? It won't go away. That's better. Tom is in the same grid as I am, and I'm in this corner of the grid. He's in this corner of the grid. So he's in EN91 also. We'll grab someone else randomly there. Let's see. Who am I going to grab? We'll grab Cindy. She was one of my students in my class. So she's in EN90. She's not in 91. She's in East Palestine area. And you can also zoom out on this. So you can see she's EN90, actually EN90 RT actually covers both Ohio and Pennsylvania. See, it's out right on the line there. So this is one of the easiest ways, the Levine site. I'll put this in the chat here, but there's a number of other ones also available on the in the slideshow presentation. I
Anthony,
won't go through them all. Yes.
you can also look it up on QRZ.
Yes, you can. And that's in the information also.
Yeah.
So all these ways to find your grid square. And by the way, when you do this, the other neat thing, here's the one from QRZ. We'll go there real quick. The other thing you can do when you're doing this is once you know your grid square, you can also find out everyone else that lives in your area, so you can find all the other hams that live near you. So here's all the hams that live in EN91 HE. And see here, over here is where, okay, why am I not finding, you're right here, but what there, you're hiding under, there's Tom, and here I am right over, let's zoom in a little bit. The problem is when you get more than one person on the same, there I am. So there's a number of ways you can do it, but any of these ways, and here's the SOTA map, you can use that. You can use any of these ways to find it. The DX cluster geocoding will get you there also. And if you're just worried about the 2 digits, not the 6 digits, even a map will let you look it up on that and find it by looking at a map. So there's a bunch of different tools that I have available in this link.
Tony, that's so simple. I apologize for asking the question. But,
No, that's very important. Oh, and by the way,
I've already figured out mine.
okay, very good. I want you all to do something else too. Go into QRZ and look at your own page. Just search for yourself. Okay? And when you find yourself, go into the details and check to make sure the grid square matches what you found. Because sometimes the grid squares on QRZ are not right, especially if they use the post office box. It might be your local post office and not your actual address. The 4 digits will be right, but the 6 digits may be wrong. So occasionally, just check, and you can change that by signing up for your page on QRZ. And I don't want to get too far off the end of the track here, but I have a whole presentation on finding hams in your area, and I talk about this whole thing. And that, again, is in my list of things. Other questions? Those are we had 2 great questions so far. Come on, more questions.
Hey, Tony, this is Harry over here.
Yes.
With the Simplex day, somebody was telling me that if you're doing a multiple station, or if you have like three operators in one area, to get credit, you needed to have an EOC visit your site. You know anything about that?
I don't know that's one of the rules. You're gonna have to. I would look through the rules in detail here to find that out,
Okay.
because I am not familiar with that.
Okay. Well, they were saying, I guess, like for bonus points or something, the EOC had to come visit you or identify
The bonus points are right here.
Okay. All right, I can look it up. I appreciate it. Hey, this is a very good information you presented tonight. I learned quite a bit,
Well,
so.
thank you. And I have the general information on contesting too. The exchanges are different for different types of contests. It can be anything like a serial number. It might be the state. It might be a grid. A lot of them use names. And by the way, in contests that use names, you don't have to use your real name as long as you use the same name through the whole contest. So Anthony's too long, especially when I'm doing CW, and I don't really answer to Tony because it just doesn't ring a bell. So I actually use my initials, which happen to be AL. So when I'm sending my name for those contests that require name as the exchange, I use AL as my exchange. Everyone assumes my name is Al probably, but I like the way it sounds. It sounds nice on CW, and it's quick and it's easy. And it's only 2 characters instead of 7.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Anthony, I think what he was referencing, if you
Yes.
are at an EOC station, you get another 50 points.
Okay.
Okay.
Actually, you get 250.
Gotcha there. I see it there. Okay.
Yeah, there is a 250 bonus for being an EOC. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Thanks again, Anthony. Have a
You're
good
welcome.
night.
Other questions? Sorry
Yeah,
about the phone there.
if I can, unless somebody
Yes.
else jumped in.
Go right ahead.
So explain the Aries aspect with the bonus points. I'm not quite sure I'm understanding that.
I'm really not that. I'm not the person to answer that question. I can
Okay.
tell you that they are included. I would look over the rules and information. There's also an FA. There's other information on that site. Let me bring that share back up again. Take a look at all the information on the Ohio Simplex page, because there are some things on here that are slightly different. And I didn't want to spend all the time really going over that particular contest because I want to encourage you to get on the air. But I do want to point out one thing. They do have the suggested frequencies here. So if you are
yeah.
working FM, you're really going to want to follow these FM or digital. You're going to want to follow these specific frequencies. There's also a set of suggested frequencies for the VHF UHF contest, but they're talking about single sideband and CW in most cases. And one of the things I would strongly suggest with these is, let's say you have a mobile radio that does 6 meter, 2 meter, and 70 centimeter FM, like I have the TYT 9800 or the Yaesu 9800. Make sure you put all these in your memories. Set up a memory bank and put each one of these so you can just click, click, click through the memories. You don't have to retune to them. Because what happens is you'll find out that when you go on, some of these frequencies are going to be very busy, and you might never get your call in edgewise. So make sure you have all of these simplex frequencies, and there's actually some additional 6 meter FM simplex frequencies that are available. But have those programmed in so you can simply switch between them real quick. And then the nice thing is if you have all 3 bands set up, you can say, when you make a contact on 5254, you can say, can you QSY to 146.460? And then can you QSY to 446.050 or whatever you want them to do. And I do, in that VHF beginner's guide, have all the simplex channels in there. Let me just, I don't have that access to that right now. Let me grab that real quick. There are a number of different FM frequencies. Let me bring that presentation up. I'm not sure what slideshow that's in, so I'm not going to bring it up right now. But there are, in that beginner's guide to VHF, UHF, the list of all the simplex frequencies for the different 6 meter band FM. Other questions? So the first thing I would suggest is, if you are interested in doing this, get your FM radio tuned to 146.520 and start listening for some simplex. You'll be surprised. You'll hear people calling. That's the national calling frequency for 2 meters, 146.520, and have that on and start listening, and that'll give you an idea of, you know, what you're hearing from the station that you have set up. Or get some friends and get on from a little bit of distance and try it out. Because if you've never worked Simplex before, it's a little bit awkward the first couple times, especially if you have a rotator that you need to rotate an antenna, or if you're not really used to working Simplex, it's a lot different to working repeaters.
One other question, as far as logging software, I use a Mac. Any suggestions?
Yeah, on my website, if you go to k8zt.com, and then up at the top where it says operating, there's one that says logging. It has logging software for Mac and for Linux on here also. So like Skocum Logger, and there's another one here for Mac. I don't remember which one it is. So these are some of the different softwares for different operating systems. That didn't work. In my presentation on logging, I also have some other Mac ones too, so you might need to look around. There's one called Ether. I've not used that before. Oh, this is the one I was looking for. It's called Rumlog. That's probably the most popular one, and it's free. If you're going to operate digital, any of the digital modes, you're going to need to have some sort of sound card interface. If you're doing it on 6 meters and you have your radio has a built-in sound card interface, it's pretty easy. But if you need to add something, take a look at my presentation on VHF and UHF. Now, the nice thing is that even if you're not going to worry too much about contesting, that'll prepare you to be able to do things like WinLink and other activities that are really good for emergency preparations to be able to have that capability. FL Digi. So once you get your radio set up and interfaced with your sound card and your computer, then you can operate those modes very easily. And I have a whole bunch of information on that in my presentation on digital operations. So the contesting sometimes is just the thing that's going to get you ready to do a bunch of other things. It's going to get you ready to operate in a emergency type of communication because you're going to be used to handling multiple call signs. You're going to be used to operating without a repeater. These are all things that will really grow your emergency preparedness. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you the prize. You don't get large cash money for winning any of these contests. Pretty much it's either a certificate or in some cases, if you're really lucky, a trophy. So if you're getting into amateur radio contesting for the money, find another field.
Anthony, I assume the frequencies allowed for FM analog are probably defined in the rules, or is it just whatever you can do?
I'm sorry, there are specific simplex frequencies you should stick to the band plans for. So let me go there real quick. I think it's in this presentation that I have on beginners. Nope, it's not that one. Let me grab the full slideshow here 1 second. This is one of the problems with having a couple hundred presentations, then you can't necessarily find them all immediately. There we go. So this is the slideshow for the beginner's guide to VHF and UHF. And as I said, there's 4 hours of video that goes with this. So for example, these are the 2 meter simplex frequencies. And we're in the yellow zone, so the yellow ones are the ones you should be using. So if you're using 2 meter FM simplex, you don't want to just randomly pick a frequency because, well, first of all, you might be on a repeater input or output. Second
Sure.
of all, if you really go on the wrong part of the band, you might be on top of a satellite input, or you may be in the CW portion of the band. So
Mhm.
the bands do have limitations as to what you can do. So for example, here's a sample plan for 6 meters, and you can see that there's only specific areas where there's FM simplex frequencies.
Okay.
And these are the simplex calling channels for each of the four most popular bands. 2 meter.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with the band plans for HF than I am for.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
VHF.
that's why I have all these gathered here. Here's the
Yeah.
6 meter frequencies. Here's
Thank
the
you.
FM. Here's the FM simplex frequencies for 6 meters. This is all in the presentation, and I'll put the link in the chat for this slideshow. But there's a video that, as I said, that goes with all this. But this is the slideshow for the beginner's guide to VHF UHF.
Mhm.
Where'd the chat go? There we go. And these are the frequencies for single sideband and CW. This is the most active area. So if you're, it's a pretty big band on 440 or on 70 centimeters. So you're going to want to, be looking in the area where people are going to be at.
Mhm.
So if you do have a multi-mode capable radio, this is where you're going to want to tune for single sideband.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions, comments, suggestions? Also, if you are a technician and you're interested in upgrading to general, our local radio club, the Cuyahoga Falls Amateur Radio Club, is starting a online class on Sunday, the 12th. That's this Sunday. I'll put the link to get the information on that in the chat. It's tiny.cc/BAHAMG. It's in there, and it'll be 6 weeks. It'll be Sunday afternoons from 1:30 to 4 o'clock, and we will also be doing an extra class license prep later in the spring. Also, feel free to contact me via my email address. Let me bring it up here real quick again. You can do it at k8zt@arrl.net, or actually probably better to do it at k8zt73@gmail.com. Other questions or comments? Well, hopefully I'll work some of you in the contest. If not, I'll work you on the air. And again, if any of your local clubs would like any of the presentations that I have available, I'd be happy to do a presentation for your local group.
Anthony, thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
hosting this for us tonight, and lots of good information there. In the business world, I hate Zoom meetings because they tend to take about 8 minutes of useful information and pack it into an hour-long presentation. This is quite the opposite. There's a lot of good, useful information in what Anthony had, and the biggest difference is there's lots of holes that you're going to need to fill. He's shown you where all the information is that you can get that you're going to have questions on. So that very, very good explanation and presentation, and we appreciate that. Lastly, as I said, one of the things that you need to do is you got to start somewhere. Get out there and get on the air, have fun with it. This particular VHF contest, either one of them, both of them together, it's not as intense as some of the HF contests are. You're not going to be, just inundated with call signs and activity. So I think one slide called it a little bit more leisurely and relaxing than some other contests could be. So don't be afraid to get in there. You might want to listen to one or two cues first just to get the rhythm of it, but don't be afraid to get in there and give it a try. And that'll set you up for your next contest, for your next one. Every time you do it, you'll get better. At the end of a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it takes, you'll be awesome and you'll be having a lot of fun. So that is the key here. We're all doing this because we enjoy it, and it's a lot of fun. And I thank you all for being here.
Before you run, Tom, I just want to mention to everyone, if there's other things you'd like the section to cover with a Zoom session like this, just let Tom know and we'll be happy to find someone, or I'll do it, or whatever. We'd love to be able to do things for the people in our area via the section. So just let Tom know if there's any topics you'd like covered in a future Zoom session.
Yeah, if you're not aware, the Ohio section in the ARRL is the largest section in the ARRL as far as membership goes. Now there's some other states like California. They have more active hams than Ohio does, but they break it down into different sections. So we are the largest section in Ohio. We got a lot of great activities going on in Ohio. As an example, we've got the Hamvention coming up in May. And if you're a new ham and you're wondering whether you really want to be involved in this hobby or not, make it to Hamvention. It's right in our backyard. It's in Dayton, or actually the Xenia area. And you just won't find a better program than what goes on at Hamvention. It's a 3-day event. So you don't have to be there for the full 3 days. There's a lot of guys, I've done it myself. We'll drive down for a Saturday and turn around and drive back home again. And that's okay. Just be there, be a part of it, and you'll meet people from all over the world. You'll see everything that there is to see, and it's a great time. The other thing, go ahead.
If the contesting thing grabs your attention, there's also the Contest University, which is the Thursday before Dayton, held right adjacent to the Hamvention. So that's another great opportunity here in Ohio, and that's Contest University. You can go to the website, just do a search for Contest University. They have all the previous sessions there, and you can see information. It's mostly geared towards HF contesting, but there is some VHF contesting also that they talk about. Sorry, Tom.
No, that's fine.
Also,
Hamvention has a little bit of everything. So if you're interested in QRP operating, satellite operating, it's all going to be there. No matter what your interests, where your interests lie, you're going to find something there. We also have some great DX organizations, the Southwest DX Association down in Cincinnati. Great organization. They do a lot of good things. They have a program at Hamvention. They do some other things on the air and in support of DXpeditions. There's all kinds of really, really neat people in the Ohio section that are doing all kinds of different things. We have a great advantage in our hobby because we live in an area that's so concentrated with lots of good things going on. So I thank you all for being here tonight. If you have anything else, send me an email, wb8lcd@arrl.org. Be happy to correspond with you on anything you need or would like. And yeah, ham radio is the greatest hobby in the world. I'm glad you're here with us, and I'll just say 7-3 and turn it back to Anthony if you've got anything else. And you're muted. Anthony, you're muted.
Thank you. So I included in the chat the link to the Ohio section. Also, if you want to save the chat, you can go up to the top of the chat window, click on the 3 dots, and you can save the chat have the links in it there also. 73 to everyone. Hope to work you in the VHF UHF contest. Also think about any other contests. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions.
All right. Have a great evening, everybody. 2 weeks coming up. I'll look forward to working you in the contest. As I said, everybody's got a different goal in the contest. I'm primarily looking into fill in some grid squares on 6 meters and to make as many FM 2-meter contacts as possible, because I know there's a lot of people looking for queues on 2 FM to help them get started. So 7-3, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Good night, Mark.
Yeah, it would've been, oh shucks, I missed that. I'm glad I went and checked my email. I was looking for something else. Well, QCW Chapter 1 is going to do their meeting on Zoom this weekend, because you never know what Mother Nature wants to throw at us.
All right, well, you found us, so we're glad for that. And hopefully see you next week at the PCARS meeting.
Oh yeah, I looking at that, the meeting. Norris has their luncheon tomorrow over at Golden Corral, I think it's gonna be. They normally go there the first Tuesday. The Norris group does. Yeah, there's a lot of places, a lot of things happening in ham radio.
All right. Well, Anthony, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. And then, like I say, and then it'll probably take me 48 hours. I'll have it over to the Ohio website, and we'll be all set.
I will
You're
also
gonna put this whole, so you're gonna have the whole video Zoom taping
Yeah.
over on the Ohio
Yes.
section?
Yes,
Okay.
it's been recorded, and we'll have it there for you.
Tom,
Oh,
I'll
wow,
also
okay.
link to it on the Facebook links that I put up for the presentation. I'll put the slideshow link up there then.
Okay.
I mean
All right.
the video link.
Have
Okay.
a good evening, everybody.
Yep. The
All right.
whole this stuff is so great that you can have slideshows, you can get video. It's like you can be there and you're not there.
Pretty much.
All right,
Anthony,
Tom, I'll let you
you'll
go.
need to make me the host again so
Yes,
that I can close it
I'm
out. All right.
That's why I didn't leave, because I knew I would have shut the meeting down when I left, because I hadn't switched you over.
Yeah, well, I've had that happen before. It
Yes.
usually works itself out, but all right. Good night, everybody. We'll talk
Good
to you
night.
later.